The battlefield was quiet, too quiet. The air smelled of smoke and burnt metal, and the ground was covered in the wreckage of destroyed machines. In the distance, broken ships lay scattered across the land like fallen giants. The sky, once blue, was now filled with dark clouds. Captain Neil Harding stood at the front of his small team. His uniform was torn, and there was dried blood on his arm, but he ignored it. His eyes stayed focused on the figure before him. A tall, armored alien woman with dark red skin and sharp golden eyes. She was General Vashkala of the Zyrex Dominion, a species feared across the galaxy for their strength and warrior culture. Vashkala looked down at him, unimpressed. She crossed her arms and let out a slow breath, her sharp teeth visible as she sneered. "Your species is weak," she said, her voice full of arrogance. "You are small, fragile, and slow. Your bones break too easily. Your weapons are outdated. You should surrender." Harding didn't move. He had heard the same words many times before. From stronger enemies, from bigger armies, from those who thought humanity was nothing but a weak and dying race. He simply smiled. "Then why haven't you beaten us yet?" For a moment, there was silence. Vashkala narrowed her golden eyes. She had fought many wars, crushed many civilizations, and never had she met a species as strange as humans. They were physically weaker than most spacefaring races, yet they refused to surrender. They lost battles, but they kept fighting. Their planets were attacked, yet they never stopped resisting. It was irritating. One of her soldiers, a towering Zyrex warrior, stepped forward. "Let me prove it, General," he growled. "Let me show them what true strength looks like." Vashkala nodded. "Very well. Let's see how long this human lasts." A large circle formed as the Zyrex warriors stepped back, their red armor gleaming in the dim light. Harding turned to his team. "Marcus, stand down. I'll handle this." The human soldier next to him, Marcus, hesitated. "Captain, that thing is twice your size." Harding smiled. "Then I'll have to be twice as smart." Marcus sighed but obeyed. The Zyrex warrior stepped forward. He was over 7 feet tall, his muscles thick as steel cables. His armor was lighter than the others, allowing him to move faster. Harding rolled his shoulders. He wasn't the best fighter, but he had learned a few things from experience. He didn't need to win. He just needed to last. The fight began. The Zyrex warrior charged, swinging a heavy fist toward Harding's head. The human ducked just in time, feeling the air shift above him. If that punch had landed, it would have knocked him out instantly. Harding didn't try to punch back. That would be useless. Instead, he moved. He dodged left, then right, staying just out of reach. The Zyrex warrior growled in frustration, throwing another punch, then another. Each time, Harding was just a little too fast. The Zyrex were used to fights ending quickly. They relied on strength, but Harding knew strength wasn't everything. He let the alien tire himself out, forcing him to keep swinging. After a minute, the Zyrex warrior slowed down. His breathing became heavier. Harding finally made his move. He dodged another punch, stepped in close, and slammed his knee into the alien's ribs. It wasn't a strong hit, but it was placed well. The Zyrex warrior staggered back in surprise. The watching soldiers murmured, "This wasn't normal. A human should have been crushed by now." Harding wiped sweat from his forehead. "Getting tired already?" he asked, grinning. The Zyrex warrior roared and rushed at him again. Harding sidestepped and kicked at the back of his knee. The alien dropped slightly, losing balance. Before the warrior could recover, Harding jumped onto his back, wrapping an arm around his thick neck in a chokehold. It wouldn't stop him, but it sent a message. He was smarter, faster, and unwilling to back down. For several seconds, the Zyrex warrior struggled, trying to throw Harding off, but the human held firm, his grip like iron. "Enough!" Vashkala's voice cut through the air. Harding let go and jumped back. The Zyrex warrior gasped. stepping away, his pride wounded. He had never been bested by such a small, fragile creature before. Vashkela stared at Harding for a long moment. This was no ordinary fight. This was a demonstration of something she had never understood before, the true strength of man. She had called them weak. But now, for the first time, she wasn't so sure. The air was thick with tension. The Zyrex warriors stood silently, their golden eyes locked onto Captain Neil Harding. They had expected an easy victory, a quick show of dominance. Instead, they had witnessed something different, something unexpected. Vashkela, the Zyrex general, remained still. Her gaze was unreadable, but Harding could sense that she was thinking. Humans had always been seen as weak, yet here he stood, proving otherwise. The defeated Zyrex warrior stepped back, his breathing heavy, his pride wounded. He avoided eye contact with his fellow soldiers. Losing to a human, it was unheard of. Vashkela finally spoke. That was surprising. Harding wiped sweat from his forehead. You expected me to lose in seconds, didn't you? The alien general crossed her arms. Strength is everything in war. You are not strong. Harding raised an eyebrow. Then why am I still standing? For the first time, there was no sneer on Vashkela's face. Instead, there was curiosity. She turned to her soldiers. Prepare the training grounds. We will test them further. The Zyrex warriors moved quickly, activating large machines and setting up combat simulations. Massive steel walls rose from the ground, forming a battlefield. The floor split open, revealing various weapons, obstacles, and combat droids. The air buzzed with energy as the arena powered up. Marcus, one of Harding's soldiers, leaned in and whispered, "Captain, this doesn't look good." Harding smirked. "Relax, Marcus. They're just trying to scare us." Marcus frowned. "Well, it's working." Vashkela gestured toward the battlefield. "If you want to prove your species is strong, then survive this test. If you fail, you are not worthy of respect." Harding looked at his team. There were only 5 of them. The Zyrex were testing humans, but this was more than a test. It was a challenge. "We're in," Harding said. Vashkela smirked. "Then let's begin." The battle simulation started instantly. 4 massive combat droids, each twice the size of a human, emerged from the arena walls. Their metal bodies gleamed under the lights, and their red eyes glowed as they scanned the battlefield. They carried heavy weapons, energy cannons, bladed arms, and reinforced shields. The Zyrex soldiers watched from the sidelines, expecting the humans to fail. Harding and his team moved quickly, taking cover behind large metal barricades. The droids locked onto them, and within seconds, the battlefield exploded with gunfire and energy blasts. "Spread out," Harding ordered. Marcus and 2 other soldiers sprinted left, drawing the attention of one droid. Harding and the last soldier, Reyes, moved right. A droid charged straight at Harding, its massive blade arm swinging. Harding ducked, rolling to the side just as the blade crashed into the ground, sending sparks flying. He fired his rifle, but the droid's armor was too strong. "These things are tough," Reyes shouted. "Then we get creative," Harding replied. He noticed something. The droids were powerful but slow. If they tried to attack, they needed a second to reset their stance. That was their weakness. "Aim for the joints," Harding called out. The team adjusted their tactics. Instead of shooting blindly, they aimed for the droid's weak points: the knees, the elbows, the exposed wiring near the neck. Slowly, the droids began to falter. Marcus tossed a grenade under one of the droids. It exploded, sending the machine stumbling backward before collapsing. Reyes climbed onto another droid's back, stabbing a knife into its wiring. Sparks flew, and the machine twitched before shutting down. One by one, the droids fell. The battlefield fell silent. Harding looked up at Vashkela, who was watching with an unreadable expression. Her soldiers were murmuring among themselves. They had expected the humans to run, to panic, to fail. But instead, they had adapted. They had fought smart. Vashkela stepped forward, her golden eyes studying Harding. You do not fight like other species. You do not rely on brute force. Harding wiped dust from his face. Strength isn't just about muscles. It's about strategy, about knowing when to fight and when to move. Vashkela nodded slowly. Perhaps there is more to your species than I thought. She turned to her soldiers. Prepare another test. This is not over yet. Harding smirked. We'll be ready. The humans had won this round, but the real challenge was still ahead. The battlefield was quiet again. Smoke still lingered in the air from the destroyed combat droids. Captain Neil Harding stood with his team, catching his breath. His uniform was covered in dust and sweat, but his eyes remained sharp. They had passed the first test, but he knew more was coming. General Vashkela stepped forward, her golden eyes studying Harding. There was no longer mockery in her gaze, only curiosity. You survived longer than I expected, she admitted. But brute machines are nothing compared to real war. Let's see how you handle strategy. Harding smirked. Strategy is what humans do best. Vashkela raised a hand. The battlefield shifted again. Metal walls moved, rising from the ground. The open space transformed into a maze-like structure, with narrow pathways and high towers. Drones hovered above, scanning the area. In the distance, mechanical weapons hummed as they powered up. A Zyrex soldier stepped forward, holding a device. This is a war simulation, he explained. You will lead your team through the battlefield. You must reach the extraction point before time runs out. Along the way, there will be enemy drones, automated turrets, and hidden traps. Harding nodded. And if we fail? Vashkela smirked. Then your species is not ready for real war. Marcus sighed. No pressure, huh? Harding glanced at his team. Stay sharp, stay low, and trust each other. Let's move. The simulation began. The humans moved quickly, sticking to the shadows. The maze was full of dangers, turrets hidden in the walls, drones scanning for movement, and small combat bots waiting to attack. Harding crouched behind a metal barricade, scanning the area. A drone hovered nearby, searching for targets. Raise, EMP grenade, Harding whispered. Raise nodded, pulling a small device from his belt. He tossed it carefully, and as soon as it hit the ground, a blue pulse spread through the air. The drone sparked and fell, disabled. They moved forward. A turret activated ahead, aiming directly at them. Before it could fire, Marcus grabbed a reflective shield from his pack and positioned it in front of the team. The turret's shots bounced off harmlessly. Nice work, Harding said. I'd rather not get fried today, Marcus replied. The path ahead split into two routes. One was a straight corridor, but it was lined with obvious traps. The other path led into a dark tunnel, its end unseen. They want us to take the tunnel, Rise muttered. Harding nodded. Exactly, which is why we won't. Instead of taking either route, Harding looked up. The walls of the maze were tall, but not impossible to climb. We're going over, he said. Marcus frowned. Climbing? In the middle of a war zone. Trust me, Harding said. Using grappling hooks from their packs, the team climbed the metal walls. As they reached the top, they saw the hidden ambush waiting in the tunnel, combat droids standing in the shadows, ready to strike. You were right, Rise whispered. Harding smirked. Now let's keep moving. They jumped down on the other side and continued toward the extraction point. From the observation deck, Vashkela watched. Her soldiers stood behind her, confused. They should have taken the tunnel, one soldier muttered. They should have been eliminated, another said. But Vashkela remained silent. She was beginning to see something she had never understood before. The Zyrex were strong, but their strength came from tradition, from discipline, from generations of warriors trained in a strict system. The humans, they had no such system. They fought with instinct. They adapted to the unknown. They broke the rules. And that made them dangerous. Back in the maze, Harding's team reached the final stretch. The extraction point was in sight, but standing in their way was one last obstacle, a heavily armed combat mech. "That thing looks angry," Marcus muttered. The mech's weapons glowed as it prepared to fire. Harding's mind raced. Fighting it head-on was suicide. Then an idea struck him. "Marcus, Reyes, distract it. Don't engage, just keep it busy." They nodded and moved quickly, firing small bursts to draw its attention. The mech turned to face them, weapons locking on. That was all Harding needed. He sprinted toward the mech's blind spot and climbed onto its back. Gripping tightly, he pried open a maintenance panel and jammed a grenade inside. He jumped off just as the explosion tore through the mech's core. The massive machine staggered, sparks flying from its body, and then collapsed with a heavy thud. The extraction point was clear. Harding and his team ran forward, reaching the finish just as the timer hit 0. The simulation ended. The battlefield powered down, and the metal walls sank back into the ground. The humans stood victorious. Vashkela stepped forward, staring at Harding. "You were not the strongest," she said. "You were not the fastest, but you were the smartest." Harding smirked. "Like I said, strategy is what humans do best." For the first time, Vashkela did not argue. She simply nodded. But deep inside, she was beginning to wonder, was strength really just about power? She wasn't sure anymore. The battlefield returned to silence. The humans stood at the extraction point, breathing heavily but victorious. Smoke still lingered in the air from the destroyed mech. The simulation had ended, but the tension remained. General Vashkela stood with her arms crossed, her golden eyes fixed on Captain Neil Harding. The Zyrex soldiers around her whispered among themselves. This was not how they had expected things to go. "You won," Vashkela said at last. Harding smirked. "Of course we did." The Zyrex general narrowed her eyes. "Do not mistake this for true battle, human. A real war is not a game." Harding nodded. "I know. But war is also not just about strength." Vashkela remained silent for a moment. She had been raised to believe that power decided everything. The strong ruled, the weak perished. That was the Zyrex way. But these humans, they were different. They were not the strongest. They were not the biggest. And yet, they had won. One of her officers stepped forward, looking frustrated. "General, this proves nothing. They used tricks and cowardly tactics. They ran, they hid, they avoided direct combat." Harding chuckled. "That's called strategy." The Zyrex officer glared at him. "You fight like prey, not warriors." Harding's smile faded. He took a step closer, looking the Zyrex officer directly in the eyes. "We fight to win. It doesn't matter how. If you think war is just about standing still and punching each other, then you've already lost." The Zyrex officer growled, but Vashkela raised a hand, silencing him. She looked at Harding, studying him carefully. "I will admit," she said slowly, "your kind is different. You do not rely on strength, yet you do not break. You do not follow our rules, yet you still succeed. This is unusual." Harding shrugged. "Humans are full of surprises." Vashkela tilted her head slightly. "And yet, I am still not convinced." Harding crossed his arms. "What more do you need?" Vashkela's eyes gleamed. "One final test." The Zyrex soldiers led the humans away from the battlefield and into a massive training hall. The ceiling was high, lined with bright lights. The walls were covered in weapons and ancient Zyrex battle banners. In the center of the hall stood a large, circular arena. Vashkela stepped onto the platform. "You have proven your mind is sharp, Captain Harding. Now I wish to see your body's limits." Marcus sighed. "Oh great, now they want to beat us up again." Harding smirked. "You scared, Marcus?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Of course I'm scared. Look at them. They're giants. Vashkala ignored their conversation. She gestured to one of her warriors, a tall Zyrex with dark armor. Corvas, step forward. The Zyrex warrior entered the arena. He was nearly 8 feet tall, his muscles thick as steel. His deep red skin was covered in scars, trophies from past battles. Vashkila turned back to Harding. Fight him. No weapons, no tricks. Just you and him, strength against strength. Reyes frowned. That's not fair. Vashkila smirked. Do you not want to prove your strength, human? Harding sighed, rolling his shoulders. Fine. Let's get this over with. Marcus grabbed his arm. Captain, this is insane. Harding smiled. Maybe. But if we're going to earn their respect, we have to play their game. He stepped into the arena. The fight began. Corvas charged like a beast, swinging his massive fist. Harding barely dodged in time, feeling the rush of air as the punch missed his head by inches. If that had landed, he would have been knocked out instantly. The Zyrex warriors cheered for their fighter, their voices booming through the hall. Harding moved fast. He knew he couldn't overpower Corvus, but he didn't need to. He just had to survive. Corvas swung again, and Harding ducked, rolling to the side. He jabbed at the Zyrex warrior's ribs, not to hurt him, but to throw him off balance. Corvas growled, his golden eyes narrowing. He lunged again, faster this time. Harding jumped back, barely avoiding the powerful strike. Vashkala watched from the side, her expression unreadable. The fight continued. Harding dodged, moved, countered. He never attacked head-on. He used Corvas' own strength against him, making him waste energy with wild swings. The Zyrex warriors stopped. The fight continued in the arena. Captain Neil Harding moved fast, his breath steady, his focus sharp. Corvas, the massive Zyrex warrior, attacked with relentless power, each punch strong enough to shatter bones. But Harding was not foolish enough to fight strength with strength. He dodged. He weaved. He let Corvas waste his energy on wild swings. The Zyrex warriors watching from the sidelines grew restless. Their champion should have ended the fight by now. Yet the human was still standing. Corvas growled in frustration. Fight me properly, human. Stop running. Harding smirked. Why? So you can hit me. No thanks. He ducked under another heavy swing, then struck quickly, 2 sharp jabs to Corvus' ribs. It didn't do much damage, but it made the Zyrex warrior stumble slightly. Vashkala watched from the side, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Corvus roared, rushing forward again. Harding waited until the last second, then sidestepped. The Zyrex's own momentum sent him crashing into the arena wall. The impact shook the ground. The audience fell silent. Harding took a step back, catching his breath. You're strong, he admitted, but strength alone doesn't win fights. Corvus groaned and stood up, his golden eyes burning with determination. I am not done. Harding sighed. Didn't think so. The Zyrex warrior charged again, but this time Harding didn't dodge completely. Instead, he stepped forward at the last moment, using Corvus' own force against him. He grabbed the warrior's arm and twisted, shifting his weight in a precise movement. Corvus lost balance. Before he could recover, Harding swept his legs from under him. The massive Zyrex warrior hit the ground hard. The entire hall went silent. The human had done the impossible. Harding stepped back, breathing heavily. Had enough. Corvus groaned, staring at the ceiling. Then, to everyone's shock, he laughed. A deep, rumbling laugh. He sat up, rubbing his bruised arm. You are clever, human. You do not fight with power, but with mind. I respect that. Harding extended a hand. Corvus looked at it for a moment, then grasped it, allowing the human to help him up. The Zyrex warriors exchanged glances. Some looked confused, others looked impressed. They had never seen their own kind defeated in such a way. Vashkala finally spoke. This fight is over. She stepped onto the platform, her golden eyes locked onto Harding. You have surprised me again, human. Harding smirked. I told you, we fight differently. Vashkala studied him for a moment, then nodded. You have earned my respect, not through brute force, but through skill, intelligence, and resilience. Few warriors can defeat a Zyrex in combat, and even fewer can do so without relying on strength. She turned to her soldiers. Let it be known, these humans are not weak. The Zyrex warriors stood in silence, processing her words. Some still seemed skeptical, but many nodded in agreement. Corvas grinned. I would fight by your side, Captain Harding. Harding chuckled. Glad to hear it, but let's not fight again anytime soon. My ribs hurt. The warriors laughed. The tension in the hall faded slightly. Vashkala crossed her arms. There is still much to discuss. Strength is not everything in war, as you have shown. Perhaps there is more we can learn from each other. Harding nodded. That's the idea. We're not here to be enemies. We're here to be allies. Vashkala smirked. We shall see, Captain. We shall see. For the first time since their arrival, Harding felt they had taken a real step forward. The Zyrex still valued strength above all, but now they saw that strength could take many forms. And humanity. Humanity had proven once again that they were more than just survivors. They were warriors in their own way. Captain Neil Harding stood in the center of the training hall, still catching his breath. The echoes of his fight with Corvas lingered in the air. The Zyrex warriors who once looked down on him now watched with a mix of curiosity and respect. General Vashkala studied him closely, her golden eyes unreadable. You have proven your skill, human, she said at last. But tell me, why do you fight this way? Why do you rely on mind instead of pure strength? Harding wiped the sweat from his brow and smirked. Because strength fades, muscles grow tired. Even the strongest warrior can fall if they don't think ahead. Vashkala raised an eyebrow. You say power is not everything. But on the battlefield, power decides life and death. Harding nodded. True, but power comes in many forms. You saw how we fought in your simulation. We didn't just attack blindly. We used strategy, teamwork, and adaptability. That's why we survived. Corvas, still rubbing his sore arm, chuckled. He speaks the truth, General. I thought he was weak, but he is clever. The Zyrex warriors murmured among themselves. Harding could see doubt in some of their faces, but others were beginning to understand. Vashkala turned to her soldiers. Tell me, warriors, do you believe the humans have earned our respect? There was a moment of silence. Then Corvas stepped forward. Yes, they are not like us, but they are warriors in their own way. Another Zyrex warrior nodded. They do not fight like us, but they do not surrender. That is strength. A few others grunted in agreement. Harding glanced at his team. Marcus whispered, Are we actually winning them over? Reyes smirked. Looks like it. Vashkala remained silent for a moment. Then she spoke. Perhaps there is more to you than I thought, Captain Harding. You have proven that your kind is not weak. But there is still one thing I do not understand. Harding crossed his arms. What's that? She stepped closer, her expression serious. Your species is not the strongest in the galaxy. You are not the fastest. You do not have natural weapons or thick armor like we do. And yet your kind survives. More than that, you thrive. Why? Harding smiled. Because we don't give up. No matter how hard things get, we keep going. We find a way. Vashkala studied him, then nodded slowly. I see. She turned to her warriors. The humans have earned the right to stand as equals among us. They are not Zyrex, but they are warriors in their own way. From this moment forward, they will be treated with respect. The hall filled with murmurs, but no one objected. The change in attitude was clear. Corvas grinned. Perhaps one day we will fight side by side, human. Harding smirked. I like that. Just don't expect me to wrestle another giant like you." The Zyrex warriors laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that filled the hall. The tension that had once separated the two species was beginning to fade. Vashkala turned back to Harding. "Come, there is much we must discuss. If we are to be allies, we must learn from each other." Harding nodded. Agreed. For the first time since arriving, he felt like they had taken a real step forward. The Zyrex had always believed strength was everything. But now, they were beginning to understand. True strength was not just about power. It was about will, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. And that was humanity's greatest strength of all. Captain Neil Harding followed General Vashkala through the grand halls of the Zyrex warship. The atmosphere had changed. Where once the Zyrex warriors had eyed the humans with disdain, now they looked at them with curiosity and, in some cases, respect. Marcus leaned over to Reyes and whispered, "Is it just me, or do they look less angry?" Reyes smirked. "I think we finally proved we're not weak." Harding glanced at his team. "Stay sharp. Just because they respect us doesn't mean they trust us yet." Vashkala led them into a large chamber, its walls decorated with ancient Zyrex battle banners. A massive circular table stood in the center, its surface projecting a holographic map of the galaxy. The Zyrex officers gathered around, their expressions serious. Corvaz stood among them, his arms crossed, watching Harding with interest. Vashkala gestured to the map. "We speak of war. If humans and Zyrex are to be allies, then you must know the true threat." Harding stepped closer. The hologram displayed a sector of space marked with red warning symbols. The system was unknown to him, but the Zyrex officers looked grim. "Who are they?" Harding asked. Vashkala's eyes darkened. "They are the Vordren, a race of conquerors. They consume, destroy, and leave nothing behind. Their fleets are unlike anything you have faced." Harding frowned. "And they're coming here?" Vashkala nodded. "Not yet, but they will. The Zyrex have fought them before. We pushed them back, but at great cost. And now, our scouts report their forces are growing once more." Reyes studied the map. "How do they fight?" Corvaz answered, "Like beasts. Their ships are not built for defense. They are made for one purpose: destruction. They do not retreat. They do not surrender. They will throw everything they have at us until we fall." Marcus crossed his arms. "Great, just what we needed. An unstoppable horde." Vashkala turned to Harding. "You claim humans fight with strategy, not just strength. Show us. If we are to stand together, we must know how you would face the Vordren." Harding nodded. "All right, let's start with what we know. You said they don't retreat. That means they rely on overwhelming force, but it also means they don't adapt. That's a weakness." The Zyrex officers exchanged glances. One of them scoffed. "What does it matter? Their numbers alone will crush us." Harding smirked. "Not if we don't fight them head-on. You've been meeting their force with your own, haven't you? Trying to outmatch them in direct combat." Vashkala nodded. "That is the Zyrex way." Harding tapped the table. "That's the problem. You're fighting them on their terms. You need to fight them on yours." Corvaz frowned. "Explain." Harding zoomed in on a particular region of the map, an asteroid belt near the contested sector. "Here, you can use this terrain. Force them into tight spaces, cut off their ability to swarm. If they don't retreat, you use that against them. Lead them into traps. Make them waste their numbers. You don't need to destroy all of them. You just need to make them unable to fight." The room fell silent. The Zyrex officers had never considered this approach. Vashkala narrowed her eyes. "You would fight like shadows, striking and vanishing." Harding nodded. "It's not about honor. It's about survival. And if we want to win, we have to be smarter than them." Corvus grinned. "Clever. Very clever." The skeptical officer from before still looked doubtful. "This is not our way." Vashkala turned to him. Perhaps our way must change. The officer stiffened but said nothing. Harding exhaled. Look, I know we're different, but if humans and Xerx fight together, we can do more than just survive. We can win. Vashkala studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. Then let us see if your strategy can truly defeat the Vordran. Harding nodded. Let's get to work. For the first time, humans and Xerx stood together, not as enemies, but as allies preparing for the war to come. The war room was filled with tension. The Xerx officers stood around the holographic map, their golden eyes fixed on the glowing red markers that represented the Vordran fleet. Captain Neil Harding took a deep breath. We don't have time to wait. If we hit them first, we gain the advantage. Vashkala nodded. You suggest an ambush. Harding pointed at the asteroid belt on the map. This is our best chance. The Vordran don't stop. They move in a straight path, crushing anything in their way. But if we lure them into this field, we can break their formation and force them into a fight they're not prepared for. Corvus grinned. Trapping beasts in a cage of stone. I like this plan. One of the Xerx officers frowned. We have never fought like this. We meet our enemies in open battle. Vashkala turned to him. And that is why we have suffered losses. It is time to learn from our new allies. Harding nodded. We need to move fast. We set up charges in key locations. When the Vordran enter, we collapse sections of the field, cutting them off from retreat. Then we attack from all sides. Reyes tapped her wrist computer. I can program the detonators. Just tell me where to place them. Marcus smirked. And I can make sure they explode at the right time. Vashkala glanced at her warriors. We will handle the heavy firepower. We Xerx do not hesitate in battle. Harding smirked. Good. Then let's get moving. Hours later, the human and Xerx forces moved into position. The asteroid belt stretched out before them, silent and vast. The detonators were carefully placed. The ships were hidden among the rocky formations, waiting. Harding sat in the cockpit of his fighter, gripping the controls. The plan was simple, but it had to be executed perfectly. Enemy fleet approaching, Reyes reported. They're coming in fast. Harding exhaled. Hold position. Wait for my signal. The Vordran ships entered the field. Massive, insect-like vessels, covered in jagged armor, glowing red with energy. They did not slow down. They never did. Harding's heart pounded. Just a little more. Now, he shouted. Marcus triggered the detonators. Explosions rocked the asteroid belt. Giant rocks tumbled, sealing off exits and forcing the Vordran ships to scatter. Their formation broke. All units, attack. Vashkala roared. The Xerx warships surged forward, firing plasma cannons. The human fighters weaved through the asteroids, targeting weak points in the enemy ships. Corvaz led a squad of Xerx warriors in boarding crafts, slamming into Vordran vessels and engaging in brutal close combat. The battlefield became chaos. Harding dodged between debris, locking onto a Vordran ship and firing a missile. It struck the weak spot near the engines, sending the ship spinning. Reyes, status, he called. We've cut off half their fleet. They're struggling to regroup, she replied. Vashkala's ship tore through another enemy vessel. They are strong, but we are smarter. The Vordran fought back with terrifying aggression, but they were no longer an unstoppable wave. They were trapped, confused. For the first time, they were losing. Harding gritted his teeth. Keep pushing. We can't let them recover. A massive explosion lit up the battlefield as a Xerx dreadnought fired its main cannon, destroying a Vordran warship in one shot. The enemy forces faltered. The trap had worked. Harding saw their movements shift, disorganized, uncertain. They were breaking. He clenched his fist. We've got them. The battle was not over yet, but for the first time, humanity and the Xerx stood together against the darkness, and they were winning. The battlefield was chaos. Explosions rocked the asteroid belt as human and Zyrex forces continued their attack. The Vordran, once an unstoppable force, were now trapped in a battle they could not control. Captain Neil Harding weaved his fighter between debris, dodging enemy fire. His hands were steady, his focus sharp. "Rise, status report," he called. "Their fleet is in total disarray." Rise responded. "They're trying to regroup, but they have no clear path." "Good. We can't let them recover." Harding switched his communicator. "Vashkala, let's finish this." The Zyrex general's voice came through. "Agreed. Zyrex warriors, crush them." Her warship unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, tearing through a Vordran cruiser. The enemy vessel erupted in flames, breaking apart into chunks of burning metal. Harding's fighter locked onto another Vordran ship. He fired 2 missiles. They streaked through the battlefield, striking the enemy's engines. The ship spun out of control before crashing into a floating asteroid, exploding on impact. Corvez and his Zyrex boarding teams were still inside enemy ships, fighting in brutal close combat. "Human, we are clearing the last of them inside their vessels. They do not fight with honor. They are beasts to the end." Harding nodded. "Then put them down before they do more damage." The remaining Vordran ships tried to flee, but they were trapped. The asteroid belt, once their path of destruction, had become their prison. Vashkala gave the final order. "End this." A coordinated assault began. Human fighters struck key points, disabling Vordran defenses. Zyrex warships unleashed their full firepower. The enemy fleet crumbled under the relentless attack. One by one, the Vordran ships fell. The final explosion lit up the battlefield like a dying star. Silence followed. The battle was over. The Zyrex warship's command hall was quiet, filled with a sense of victory. Harding stood beside his team, facing Vashkala and her officers. "The Vordran are defeated," Vashkala said. "Because of your strategy, we did not just survive. We won." Corvus crossed his arms. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as I once thought." Reyes smirked. "We'll take that as a compliment." Vashkala stepped forward. "Captain Harding, your people fight differently, but you have shown us something valuable. Strength is more than power. It is knowing how to use it." Harding nodded. "And you've shown us what true warriors look like. Without the Zyrex, we couldn't have won this fight." Vashkala extended her hand. "Then let this be the beginning of something greater. The Zyrex do not call many allies, but today we call humanity one of our own." Harding shook her hand firmly. "Agreed. Together, we are stronger." A roar of approval filled the hall as Zyrex warriors slammed their fists against their chests in respect. Marcus leaned toward Reyes. "Did we just make history?" Reyes grinned. "Looks like it." Harding looked at the Zyrex warriors around him. A few days ago, they had seen humanity as weak. Now, they stood as allies, ready to face whatever came next. The war was not over. There would be more battles, more challenges. But for now, they had won. And that was enough. The end.